just felt like my whole life everyone thought I was going to fail. So I had a dad who really told me to my face that I was never going to be successful.
Meet Jonathan Beskin, a serial entrepreneur,
CEO of an Inc. 5000 company,
and a Wall Street Journal best-selling author of The Least Likely Millionaire.
When I had no money, I started with $2,000. It became a $100 million plus company. We've never raised money in about 8 years. We've done over 100 million. We've shipped over 3.5 million boxes worldwide. A lot of people, automatically assume that if you're starting an e-commerce business that you need to hire a digital agency, for example. I literally taught myself how to scale Facebook ads, to take it from $20 a day completely on my own to over $10,000 a day.
What's up, friends? Thank you so much for tuning in into another great episode of Tom Talk Success, where we bring you a lot of different entrepreneurs, real estate people, just people that want to level up and want to learn and network with each other. And today I have the pleasure to introduce a good friend of mine. Jonathan Beskin is a big business owner. I've done a lot of great stuff, and I can't wait to share more. Jonathan, thank you so much for tuning in, man.
Thank you for having me.
Of
I'm
course.
excited to be here, Tom.
So I guess let's just jump right into it. So Jonathan, you was able to build literally from nothing to something. You were able to build a business from zero in revenue to over 100 million in revenue. How were you able to do it?
Well, it definitely wasn't easy, and I kind of just grinded. So I grew up with a single mom who was a teacher, never really had a lot, never really had any entrepreneurial mentors or resources or people that would kind of help me in this venture. So I went to business school at FAU in South Florida, and some of the curriculum was tied to recurring revenue model businesses. I wanted to start a recurring revenue model business at the time. Kind of subscription boxes were becoming more popular and becoming, just a bigger consumer category. And with no money and no resources, I, took this pre-revenue idea and built it to a top 200 Inc. 5000 company. In about 8 years, we've done over 100 million. We've shipped over 3.5 million boxes worldwide. So people sign up for our service. So I have two of these companies. One is called Single Swag and the other is called Paradise Delivered. And people sign up. They get a box every month that includes full-size women's lifestyle products like cosmetics, jewelry, fashion accessories, books. And we also have a shop where they can buy other stuff. But that's basically it. I taught myself everything about the business. I kind of managed an ad spend that quickly grew for over 5 years to over 10,000 a day on Meta ads. We do a lot on TikTok, we do a lot on Google, and I taught myself all that. I stopped watching TV. I stopped going out with friends when I was starting this business. I also had a son, so I had to focus on that priority. But I really became kind of obsessed with making this work because I'm convinced that a lot of other people had this idea, tried to do this, but I was successful with it. And I think that's really because I put the hard work in and made a lot of sacrifices to make it happen.
So I have to tell you, you have one of the biggest stories I've heard, because you hear a lot of different stories of people that, obviously maybe in the tech industry or something, like they built a software and they sold it. But in your position, it was a lot different. It was more like, like day-to-day hard work, just, perseverance and putting the time in. I want you to, let's go back to the beginning stages of building that business. What were some of the challenges you were going through, and looking back to it, how you were able to manage them?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of doubt and fear. And I think one of the biggest things that I had overcome was even being transparent with this idea that I had with my social network and with my personal community and my friends and my family, because I just felt like my whole life everyone thought I was going to fail. Like I had an experience where I didn't have a great childhood. I acted out as a teenager. I got in trouble. I did drugs. I just wasn't a well-behaved kid and a mature person. And I was afraid that if I put something out there to the world that was going to potentially be life-changing for me, that people were going to judge me. And but I did that, and that did happen. People did judge me, but eventually it led to an incredible success and kind of a life-changing business for me. So I'm glad I did that. And I think that, a lot of people, automatically assume that if you're starting an e-commerce business that you need to hire a digital agency, for example. I literally taught myself how to scale Facebook ads, to take it from $20 a day completely on my own to over $10,000 a day. It wasn't easy. It took a lot of testing. It took a lot of grinding. It took a lot of nights with no sleep. But I was able to do that, and I was able to teach myself a lot about international logistics. We're bringing in product from overseas. We're fulfilling it here. We use a lot of third-party fulfillment. There's a lot of dynamics with that, with domestic and international shipping. So I really, just got an education, and I really didn't hire anyone in a sophisticated way that made a lot of money to help me run this business, because I was just willing to learn so much myself. Eventually, the business scaled to a size where we did bring in some professional help. But at that point, I think the advantage I had is that when that professional help was speaking to me about these concepts with the business, I was familiar with it. And I had kind of a foundational knowledge of all these things that made me understand it better, evaluate them. I think there's a lot of digital agencies that aren't the best and will take a lot of money from you, and I kind of could see through that based on the knowledge that I had.
Wow. So that's so inspiring, because I want to talk about this topic that you mentioned, that you were able to build it by yourself, but when you brought the professionalism, the professional people, you already know because you started it by yourself. So was that an important part of your life and the business life, to start it by yourself and before you bring the professional in?
Yeah, I think it was important for me. I mean, I have, unfortunately, some deep-rooted trust issues. So I had a dad who was kind of absent from my life, who did some very, toxic things to me and my mom when I was growing up, really wasn't around. I hadn't spoken to him in a long time, and really told me to my face that I was never going to be successful, that things weren't going to work out, that kind of life is a bitch and then you die. That was like one of the favorite things he said to me. And I, just didn't have a lot of confidence that I could do that. I kind of lost my train of thought there a little bit. Go back to the question.
So I want to know, actually, it's good that you kind of share, because I want the audience to really understand that you're a self-made success story.
Yeah.
And that's what it's important, because to me, it's actually more important than all the other stuff, because I'm sure there's a lot of people in the audience that possibly go through those stages, and they could see you as a mentor to them on how to deal when you have an interesting idea, but literally the whole world is not supporting this idea. So before we go to the other question, how you were able to still continue and to move forward when the whole world is against you?
Yeah, and I think I remember just very briefly, where I was going with that, bringing up with my dad, is that I just don't easily trust people. And even the first employee, when the business got to a point where I could not manage everything myself, I was doing customer service emails, I was doing product curation, kind of putting the boxes together, deciding what was going to go in the boxes, dealing with overseas manufacturers, and really most importantly, responsible for acquisition. So I was doing all of that myself while I had a full-time job, a corporate job that I was doing that, and because I didn't know if this was going to be successful. And I didn't leave that job until I was making about 3 times as much money from the business as I was from that job. So I think it was important for me, but I also think for entrepreneurs in general, or aspiring entrepreneurs, that's not always going to be the best mentality. A lot of what I did that worked for me, was because of my own personal insecurities and my own personal trust issues. Sometimes it could be important when you're scaling something that's as hot as my business was. We were getting a lot of attention. We were on the Today Show. We were getting a lot of kind of national media exposure. If I would have brought in, some potential been willing to let go of some of the important responsibilities to seasoned people in this industry, who knows, the business could be at an even higher level than it ever achieved. So I think that that's an important concept. So it's not always best what works for me, but I think that in this case it did. But I think as I kind of mature as an entrepreneur, I think in my next business, I may be more willing to bring in the help sooner than I did in this situation.
Wow. So I want us to go again back to the beginning stages. So you were able to kind of do it all by yourself. How you were able to do it? Like were you learning all those stuff on YouTube, on Google? Like how were you able to kind of get those knowledge?
Yeah, exactly. I can kind of break it down to a few different things. I would say the most important variable that scaled the business was mastering Facebook ads. So I knew that we had to achieve a certain acquisition cost. And the way that this business is structured is that you're typically spending more money on the front end to acquire a customer than the money of coming in. But it's a profitable business because of the lifetime value of these subscriptions. So let's say our acquisition cost was around $60, or we needed to strive for an acquisition cost of 60, but the average order value was closer to 50. So we're kind of at a $10 deficit at the beginning, but the lifetime value could be over 300 in the lifetime of a subscription.
Correct.
So that's really the area that I think contributed the most to my success and the success of this business, is mastering those ads. I had no background in it. It becomes very sophisticated. There's a need within these ads to constantly refresh the creative. So bringing new images, new video, new ad copy, new coupon codes. And I watched, like you said, a lot of YouTube videos. I talked to some people, not paid them, but I talked to some people that I had personally networked with that had experience, advertising on these platforms. And they were able to give me some advice. And I grinded. I learned a lot. And now I still manage our ad spend. And once we kind of achieved a level of spend, we did get some enterprise level account management from Meta and from Google, and we were working with professionals. But even with them, I mean, there's really no one knows what's gonna work. And really, even when I work with agencies, and even though I'm a guy, these businesses are geared exclusively towards women. These are all women's lifestyle products. I still understood what brand messaging works best. And a lot of people told me, a lot of what I would call the haters or the detractors or the people that didn't even want me to be successful were saying was, well, you're a guy. What the fuck do you know about women's products? How are you've never built a business in your life. What makes you think this is going to work? And I am a guy. I don't know that much about women in general. They can confuse me, that type of thing. But I know this brand, and I know the messaging that resonates. And I kind of became obsessed with even things like ad copy and coming up with the ad copy. And the brand became a little edgier. And I came up with a copy called When You're the Love of Your Own Damn Life for Single Swag. And that literally produced tens of millions of dollars in revenue because people really resonated with that message. We got a lot of organic comments within the ads on Meta and Instagram, or on Facebook and Instagram. And it really never paid anyone, never went to a course on these things, took advantage of a lot of available resources that are out there, and kind of kept grinding and really just became obsessed with making this work and lowering the acquisition cost. And as we were lowering the acquisition cost, how much more could we scale the spend, keeping that same acquisition cost? And eventually we got to over 10,000 a day consistently for 4 years. When COVID hit, we saw a pretty immediate reduction in the acquisition cost, and we were able to spend $25,000, $30,000 a day.
When you're saying acquisition cost, you mean the price for the ads? Is that what it is?
So the price to acquire a customer. So the price essentially to acquire one subscription-based customer on Meta ads, which is about 90% of where the ads were, is roughly historically $50 to $60. When COVID hit, at that same spend, it immediately went down to $20, and we raised it to, instead of $10,000 a day, $15,000 a day. Stayed at $20, $20,000, $25,000, $30,000. It was really an incredible time and even a life-changing financial time for me personally during COVID.
So I'm actually interested in the ad spend, and you're already kind of like an expert in that. I mean, obviously with your background. Tell us, to me and to the audience, what kind of the stuff you saw that helped you gain more attraction and more attention with the ads? Like, what are some of your tips to people that run ads?
Yeah, I think it's all about testing. And I think that's what most people with expertise in ads, and the more you spend, the quicker you'll kind of get the results from the testing. So you're testing, what kind of, it used to actually be a lot different. So it used to be you're testing a lot of different targeting audiences. What, in my opinion, over the last couple of years and where we are today, towards the end of 2024 from ads, is it's much more broad targeting. When I started this business, we were targeting much more narrowly. So we had a lot of what they call lookalike audiences, where we would take 10,000 of our highest paying customers and upload that into Meta, and they would spit out a list of 2 million people in the United States or in Canada, Australia, wherever the ad was, that had similar demographic, that had similar consumer behaviors as those people. And that was highly effective. We also would target different groups and interest groups. So people that liked different women's lifestyle magazine brands, or people that like things about love. Single Swag, which is kind of the larger, bigger business, was the first subscription service designed for single women. So we would target things like dating sites. So we actually did a few advertising campaigns with Tinder and Bumble, having nothing to do with Meta. And we've actually been paid by some dating sites to put a call to action piece inside our boxes. So Match.com.
So like if they will basically pay for the membership, they will get also the box? Is that what it is?
No, so they would basically pay us a certain amount per box, and at the time we're shipping around 40,000 boxes a month, and they would pay us up front, and they would put like a 4x6 card or a business card with a scratch-off coupon code for, let's say, 3 months free on Match.com.
Got it.
And we've had some other kind of influencers. Even we've built a really big Instagram account with Single Swag, and there was a time in 2018 and 2019 where we were working with women that have been on The Bachelor, MTV shows, Real Housewives. Some of them are big name people, and we were paying them for isolated Instagram posts, for example. During that time, because we had cultivated such a big following based on our organic content, based on the amount we were spending on ads, people were paying us. So when Match.com, MTV, or an ad agency representing MTV, they had a show called Straight Up Ghosted, which is where kind of individuals who had been ghosted by somebody else brought them back in their life. I don't know how long that show lasted, but they paid us to advertise on our Instagram when they were promoting that show. And so, yeah, I mean, things like that have happened, but that's really the key thing. Like I said, I think a lot of people, when they're starting, I've spoken to a lot of people who want to start a subscription box or start an e-commerce business, and I think that one of the biggest, they're so worried about how the box is going to look. They're so worried about what products are going to go in the box. What I tell them, and my advice is always, be worried about how you're going to get customers, because if you can't get customers at the right acquisition cost, it doesn't matter what the box looks like. You can invest tens of thousands of dollars with graphic designers, with fancy experts. It doesn't matter what products you get or what cost the products are, because that's easy to get. If you're starting a business and you get people to pay you, it's easy to get that product. We got to a level where it became more challenging because we were saying we need 40,000, 50,000 units now. We have to put together big orders. There's lead time with that. But if you're starting a business like this, you don't need to get the product in advance. People have 50 units of product, hundreds of units of product. That's not as challenging to do. So my advice is always be worried about acquisition. That's the key. If you can find a scalable cost and a scalable channel to acquire customers, that's really where the focus should be at the beginning.
So essentially, you mean you see that a lot of entrepreneurs doing this big mistake of focusing on the wrong stuff. Like you're saying they should not look for perfectionism. They should rather look for trying it out and see what's work rather than just put a lot of time in making sure everything is perfect. Because it's never perfect, actually.
Well, I think that definitely, so definitely don't be perfect. Don't wait or second guess yourself because you think that someone else is doing this already, because you don't know if it's going to work. I love businesses that don't require a lot of my business. When I had no money, I started with $2,000. It became a $100 million plus company. We'd never raised money. So I love businesses that don't require a lot of overhead, that you can kind of start. There aren't a lot of barriers to entering the business. And really focus on sales and how are you going to acquire customers? Because like I said, if you don't have customers, it's a good problem to have to then have to worry about. When I started, I wasn't worried about what the box looked like. Now we have a fancy box with a mold that we paid a graphic designer to create a beautiful design, but that was once we had a need to order hundreds of thousands of boxes at the same time. When I first started, I got a white box and I put a sticker. I got stickers made and I put that on there, and I don't really think the consumer receiving that box is going to care that much about what it looks like.
You care more about the product.
Exactly.
More about what he's paying for.
Exactly.
Interesting. So, Jonathan, I want to ask you, so you were dealing with a lot of doubt, like a lot of things. Obviously, the 100 million sounds crazy, and I'm sure people like, wow, like how he did that and your crazy story. But I want you to talk to us about dealing with those challenging times, dealing with stuff doesn't go your way, dealing with failures. I mean, how you were able to continue.
Yeah. Something I didn't mention is that, and I talk about this in my book, but I have a history of severe mental illness. So I was hospitalized as an adolescent for mental illness, kind of suicidal ideation. I was even hospitalized once as an adult about 12 years ago before I started this business. And what I've learned is that, some of the symptoms of mental illness, like severe anxiety. And so if the normal kind of baseline anxiety is here, my anxiety might always be here. So that's a biological thing. I don't think it's something I can control. There's obviously medications you can take to kind of manage the symptoms of that. But, I've learned how to manage them to my benefit. So to take that anxiety and be so dialed in on a business and become so obsessed, it's kind of like a healthy obsession. I talk about this concept of healthy obsession, where all my thoughts and all my racing thoughts and everything I have going on is going towards something positive, like a business. Before I started my business, I was a serious marathon runner, and I became obsessed about nutrition, about doing yoga, about keeping my body in condition to be a marathon runner. And so I think that has helped me to kind of persevere and be disciplined. And I think those are very important things. So it's just about doing what you can to take any perceived negative, like mental illness, like anxiety, and channel it into something positive. So use those racing thoughts to think about this business from every angle, to preempt what your competitors are doing, to just go to just level up, and that's really what led to my success. I'm convinced that, millions of people could have had this idea, and like I said, there's nothing proprietary about this business. At the time I started my subscription box, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, all over the world, people were starting similar businesses because there literally is no money required. You can build a website for free. But if I wasn't as focused as I was, if I didn't put everything I had in my life and kind of stop being social, stop being for a brief period of time for the ultimate reward, I don't think it would have happened.
That is amazing, bro. Like, for real. So you mentioned that you had to take some time off. How were you able to take that time off and just, keep on focus just on the business? Like, I feel especially in today's life, there's so much distractions, social media, going out, sometimes girls, all those stuff. Like, how do you deal with like just taking the time off and focusing on building the business?
Yeah. Well, do you mean the time off, like when I was hospitalized?
No. I mean, like when you took the time off to kind of just focus on building the business.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to change my life, and I think a lot of it for me, it's not really the best reason to admit, to be honest, but I really had something to prove. So I grew up in Boca Raton, which is kind of a wealthier, upper middle class suburb here in South Florida. And I had a single mom who was a teacher, so I was lower middle class. I never drove a nice car. I never, when kids would be invited to hang out at a house, I would never be the kid who got invited to stay for dinner.
Wow.
I grew up and I had people treat me differently. And because I didn't have as much money, people I was called like trailer trash in like high school. So I definitely had something to prove, and I think that's why I was so willing. I got to a point in my life because I had a pretty decently successful career that was going somewhere. So I worked in banking. I got a job as a branch manager coming out of undergraduate at Florida State. I kind of worked my way up, doing a number of different roles in commercial banking. But I always thought I was capable of something more. But I never really had the courage or really the idea to go out. And I had no money. And I didn't realize until I started this business that it was possible to scale a serious company and change your life with not a lot of financial resources. And I was able to do it. I mean, now I kind of, can do different things in my life. But I think that, the biggest challenge for me, because that's how I grew up, that's how hungry I was and how hungry I try to be. I have an almost 16-year-old son. I'm a single dad. My son is who I love the most and really do everything for. And he's growing up in a much more privileged way because of this success that I've had. So it's kind of a balance, because I don't want my son to be one of these people that treated me like shit because I didn't have money and that type of thing. And I also want him to be hungry and maybe even work with me and to even act like he has nothing or grew up with nothing, and at least have that aggressive entrepreneurial mentality to want to be successful and not just rely on your dad to take care of you, but to really be that way as an adult.
So I want us to talk about it, bro. How crazy it is that you started with nothing. I mean, I have this conversation with my brothers all the time about, like, let's say you building yourself up and you got huge success, and now your son is obviously coming and now he's part of this success, but you coming all the way from a different perspective, different position in your life when you started it. To me, it's just like insane, because it's like one person get it all, but one person had to work for it all. What is your opinion on that, and how you are able to kind of manage it that your son will still be humble and be hungry to have that success?
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. And I think a lot of particularly teenagers and adolescents are influenced by who they're around and the types of not only adults but peers and other teenagers. And I think my son has been going to private schools since he was little, and just is around a different type of people. A lot of his friends live in my community. It's a nice community with pretty successful families. So it's not easy, and it's definitely something that I really try to be thoughtful about, to try to build up a mentality and really try to want my son to be hungry. He's a big lacrosse player, so I want him this summer to focus on doing private lacrosse lessons.
Nice.
And perhaps he wants to work at a lacrosse related retail store by us. So I think I'm doing my best to do that, but it's not easy. And I wouldn't ever want to change what I went through. And well, I would change some of the aspects of when I went through. I mentioned the whole thing with my dad, and my dad also, had been to prison for something when I was young, and it kind of led to my parents being divorced. But just really a toxic individual. And what I learned from that is, in general, I just want my son to be happy. And a lot of the stuff that my dad did to me growing up, like telling me to my face I wasn't going to be successful. I had a bar mitzvah when I was younger, and it was kind of a culminating event. He got up in front of the congregation, all my friends and family, and made a speech bad-mouthing my mom, not congratulating me. So very intense kind of childhood trauma from stuff like that. And I don't want to be that dad. I want to be a dad that's there for my son, that prioritizes him, that helps him to be happier and more carefree as a kid and that type of thing. But I also want to give him projects. It's not always easy. He doesn't really want to yet, but to get him involved in my business. And I have a lot of excess inventory, and I want him lately to set up a TikTok shop and to use this inventory to learn some kind of easy to do, in my opinion, aspects of e-commerce and things that he can do. And I'm kind of giving them the inventory, any money they can keep or he can keep. So I want to get him involved in projects because, I went to, undergraduate finance. I have an MBA from FAU. But from a practical perspective, I mean, I'm really glad I had those experiences, and I may not be where I am without them. Really, everything I do now, I've kind of learned on my own. And I think that, the critical things like the, digital advertising expertise, the operational expertise, the logistics that we're doing, bringing in product, shipping product, that's not stuff that you really learn in school that, in my opinion, you're not really going to learn until you actually do it. So you learn by doing, and you're always going to make mistakes, and you just have to be comfortable knowing that you're going to make mistakes. Hopefully they're not too costly mistakes, but you just got to keep grinding.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What a story, bro. It's pretty crazy what you've been up to and how you're able to scale it. So I want to talk to you about students. You mentioned that you started teaching FAU. I'm actually a student in FAU as well. Yeah. I want to ask you, what would you say to students that go through the phase right now where they're learning, getting their degree, but they just feel like their degree is not what they're looking for. They feel like there's no future in their degree. What would you tell them?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I am a adjunct professor at FAU. They asked me, I got an MBA from there, I graduated in 2015. I've kind of stayed involved with the university. A lot of the professors that I had have brought me back to speak about my business. And now I taught a class in the fall for the first time. I'm teaching a class, an advertising class, in the spring. And, I think everybody, circumstances are different. So I love entrepreneurship. And like I said, I love businesses that don't require a lot of upfront capital to start, especially if you're starting them on your own. So these are the types of businesses that you can do while you have a full-time job, that you can do as a side hustle. So I would encourage, and I think a lot of these students, when I talk to them, they have ideas about what they may want to do as a business, but they're either slow to take action on it, or they take action initially and don't follow through on it as consistently as they should. And I would just say to do it. There's always going to be excuses or reasons why you can't do it. You have family obligations, you have stressors in your life, but if you don't do it, you're never going to know. And the other good thing about businesses without a lot of initial capital requirement, if it doesn't work out, I think you're going to learn a lot, number one, but you haven't really risked that much, and you haven't really done that much. And I think even, like we were talking about before this started, even creators, even becoming a part of this whole creator economy, and on TikTok Shop about doing things for commissions and kind of affiliate partnerships and all of that. Yep. There's a lot of simple ways that people can, make money or begin to make money or learn new skills by just doing that. So I think that a college experience, in my opinion, is important. I don't think it's necessary to be successful. I think there are a lot of other avenues that you can pursue, but if they're not, thinking their major, I mean, obviously they can go get an advanced degree, they can go in a different direction, but I like people who, they need that security or they need some money to take a job, but there's definitely time to have a side hustle. You may have to spend a little less time on Netflix. You may have to skip 1 or 2 nights a week going out to the bar with your friends. But if you really want to create something meaningful, create a legacy for yourself and your family, if that's the type of thing you want to do, like I've done, you got to make some of those sacrifices.
Wow. So, interesting question. You literally came with no money, right? I mean, like you said, like lower middle class family.
Yeah.
And we're able to build it to the one of the top, like obviously to a lot of money. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Talk to us about this, transition from like how you were able to deal with because I'm sure there's a lot of people in the audience that could be in the same position, came from no money to a lot of money, but some of them that also actually lost maybe a lot of money.
Yeah.
How were you able to deal with that?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's very exciting to start making a lot of money, to be able to do some things. And for me, I mean, a lot of it was about proving people wrong and putting it out there. And I even got caught up too much in that. I think that I've definitely learned a lot as it's evolved. So I really started to personally become a lot more financially successful, like 2018, 2019. And I started to make a lot of buying decisions. And I think part of my thinking was that I didn't think this was ever going to end. And I thought that I was going to continue to build this business, sell it for a couple of $100 million, and live the rest of my life on the islands or on a big boat, that type of thing. And I bought a Rolls Royce. I was investing in a lot of different opportunities that came to me on different projects or pre-IPO private equity companies. And I thought that I was just going to continue to make such a crazy income. I was making myself millions of dollars a year, and it didn't last forever. And there was a kind of shift. So post-COVID, in the 6 months to a year after COVID, that whole dynamic that I mentioned about the acquisition costs coming down so much, now it started to elevate. So it became more expensive to acquire customers, and you weren't able to spend as much, weren't able to keep growing. When you have a recurring revenue model subscription-based business, it's like the analogy of a boat. There's always a leak in the boat, so you're always losing these customers. But I never worried about that when we were growing like a rocket ship, because we were bringing on so many more customers, it didn't even make a difference. So I'm not worried about it. But then churn or losing customers became a lot more serious. So today, I still I have more money than I ever thought I would in my life, but I definitely make different decisions, and I'm definitely a lot more thoughtful about how I invest my money, about how, I don't need 3 cars anymore, for example. So I think, I think also, it created even some animosity within my personal network, like people that had known me my whole life as growing up the way I did, having kind of an ordinary job, ordinary income. All of a sudden, I was driving a Rolls Royce. I was building a big, beautiful house. I, was just doing different things, and I wasn't really being quiet about it because I, was happy to share that success. I was kind of proving people wrong. But also, even I kind of cultivated a following on TikTok for myself, posting content that was in like TikTok viral format about my entrepreneurial story, so kind of rags to riches story. And I started to build, an audience from that, and it just became more well known. And I think it can come off as being flashy, but every time those posts would kind of go viral, even though it was my story, there was a big increase in website traffic for the businesses. So it led to, more success with that. And I wish I would have even, my son actually gets embarrassed that I have a big TikTok following and have gone viral a few times. So I kind of stopped doing it. I didn't want to deal with listening to the bullshit on that.
I mean,
but
to me, and I'm sorry I'm cutting you off, but
Yeah.
to me, it's I don't even know how he came to being embarrassed. To me, it's like, dude, my
Yeah.
dad is a freaking monster, Like, he
Yeah.
was able to create he came from nothing to something. Like,
Yeah.
if anything, he needs to be proud.
Yeah,
But again,
I don't disagree. I mean, but teenagers are challenging.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And that's what we talked about is like, I guess, it could be happen in your situation, could happen to other people, but they didn't go through that, right? So
Yeah.
they don't have this aspect of like you said, proving people wrong,
Yeah.
telling people, like really share with people what you've been through in your life, right? So you have the, like the mentality inside you, which I feel, and I have so much respect to that. What would you tell to people that go through the situation and they're about to give up, right? They're about to give up in their life,
Yeah.
and they need that push. How would you push
Yeah.
them to go up and achieve what they want to achieve?
Yeah, I was close to giving up multiple times in the business, and I even had conversations with individuals, and I talk about this in the book, that they basically told me, these are people that had subscription box companies and maybe gotten to like 7,000, 8,000 subscribers. We got to way bigger than that, fortunately. But they said it's never going to work without raising money. This is at kind of the infancy stages of the business. It's never going to work without having a woman, because you're a guy, you don't know anything, you need kind of an ambassador for the business, a woman. Told me all the reasons why it wasn't going to work, told me all the reasons why I wasn't qualified, I needed to go on a road show to kind of raise money, all this stuff. And it was very discouraging. It was very disheartening. I remember calling my mom, who I'm kind of closest to, and saying, I'm not going to do this anymore. Like, there's no point. It's not going to go anywhere. And literally, thank God that I didn't do that, because, through the perseverance and through all of that, I actually was relying on even getting on Shark Tank. And I went to an audition, actually in another state. I flew to an audition, and I actually got to like a second round, and I thought I was going to be on the show. And I was so overwhelmed at the time, because there were so many overwhelming. It turns out that being overwhelmed is kind of healthy for me, because if I'm not overwhelmed and don't have a lot going on, I tend to get more anxious, I tend to get more depressed. So having a lot to focus on is good. But that didn't go through, and then I was disheartened by that, because I thought that was going to be my ticket. I was going to get a real mentor. It turns out I was able to scale it to a level where I'm glad I never gave up equity in the company or anything like that. So I, just really have been on a path that is unique, and I wouldn't really change anything. And everything in my life has kind of happened for a reason. And I kind of became...
It's a reality.
Yeah. If I didn't go through this adversity in my life as a kid, I also got divorced and I became single, and the original Bigger Business is designed for single women. When I had the idea, I wanted to do men and women, but I did market research and realized that women were really the consumers for this type of
Not
business.
exactly the men
And
necessarily.
so decided to focus on women, and yeah.
Wow. What would you tell the audience looking back at your life? What was some of the stuff you do differently and how they were able to improve on their situation as well?
Yeah, I would say that, if you look at kind of my life on a bell curve, and I've done this exercise a few times called a lifeline, where I've presented to like smaller groups my life, and it's kind of like, so you go from 0 to the age I am now, I'm 43 now, and you have ups and downs and hills and valleys and certain significant events in your life. And for most of my childhood, it was all down. So it was below the kind of median. And I've been on, fortunately, an upward trajectory. And I've had a lot of positive stuff going on. And I even hear from a lot of my peers who are having challenges with their teenagers and things like that. And I try to make them, because I don't think anyone would have thought, who knew me as a teenager, who didn't give a shit about school or how well I did, only gave a shit about girls and doing drugs and thinking I was cool and acting out in insecure ways. I don't think anybody would have ever thought I would have amounted to anything. I don't think I was actually, but been voted kind of least likely to succeed, coming from where I came from and what I did. So I think people, build a narrative about you. And I think people built a narrative about me. And I think sometimes people become comfortable with that narrative. So if people think you're never going to be successful, you're going to work an ordinary job, this is kind of what your life is destined to be, and that could be fine. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, people are very happy with that. I chose to build a different narrative, and I chose to work so hard that my narrative changed in a fundamental and like permanent way. And I would just say to not let other people influence that. Really, anyone is capable of doing this, and if you do it, one of the other concepts I mentioned earlier is this healthy obsession. Whatever you're going to do, become obsessed with it and allow yourself to just immerse yourself in that. And if you do have anxiety and you do have some of these things that are perceived as shortcomings, I mean, channel all that energy into something positive. Channel all that energy into a business, into changing your life, into losing weight, into running a marathon. Whatever it is you're trying to achieve, that can be a big help.
Jonathan, thank you so much, brother. What a pleasure having you today. I feel like your story is like, it's a true, they say, you came from nothing, but you achieved something. And I feel like kudos to you for what a great story. And I feel like people need to look at your story and be like, you know what, if Jonathan was able to do it, I'm a big believer. If I have the picture of the jet. It's definitely one of my dreams. And I always tell to my parents, if other people are doing it, I can do it as well. If you were able to create that, other people can create that as well. And so I'm so thankful for people just like yourself, because you give us motivation to keep on going. And especially that you came from a hard story. It's like, to us, it's like, okay, we need to be there as well. If you were able to achieve it, other people can achieve it too. And I'm thankful for you coming and sharing your story. Thank you so much. How can people find you?
Well, I really enjoyed being here. I enjoyed meeting you.
Thank you.
At FAU and connecting with you, and I'm happy to be here. And I think you're doing great things and destined for great things as well if you stay aggressive with it, which I'm sure you will. So a few ways. So my Instagram is at jbeskin, so you can follow me there. I also have a website, jonathanbeskin.com. And I have a book that's a Wall Street Journal bestseller that kind of talks about some of the things we talked about today. It's kind of a memoir, but also has actionable advice and tips that people can use to change their life in meaningful ways, to engage in healthy obsessions, to start a business, whatever they're trying to do. And that could be found on Amazon or all major bookstores. There's also an audiobook. And yeah, I'd be happy to connect with your audience. And
thank you so much.
Yeah.
And guys, if you like this episode today, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you put in the comment which speaker should I get next. And again, make sure to follow on all the social media platforms. On Instagram, it's Tom Grobman. On the podcast page is Tom Talk Success, and it's available on all platforms. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.